The selection in the quiet of midnight, when the city slept and machines hummed low, a strange signal cracked through every screen across the world. People woke up to see it. A strange symbol glowed on every device. It looked like a spiral within, a flame moving slowly and changing colors like it was alive. Then a voice spoke in a strange rhythm that had no language, yet every human understood it without knowing how. It said that one human had been chosen for a great test beyond Earth beyond imagination. No one could stop it, no one could change it. The chosen one would be taken to a place where only the strongest survived. A place where the winner would gain power, glory, and something no human had ever known before. The voice did not explain what that meant. Then in the center of a quiet town, a bright light flashed from the sky. It struck the ground like lightning, but made no sound. When the light faded, a young man stood there frozen. He wore only his night clothes and held a half-eaten sandwich in one hand. Before he could even speak, the light returned and swallowed him whole. He vanished without a trace. People screamed, but there was nothing anyone could do. He woke up standing on a solid black floor that reflected the sky above like water. The sky was not like Earth's sky. It was filled with strange shapes flying silently and stars that burned, purple and green. Around him stood hundreds of others, but none of them looked human. Some had scales, some had fur, some had no eyes, and some floated in midair. All of them stared at him with confusion or laughter or disgust. A loud echo shook the air as a voice filled the space. It came from everywhere and nowhere. The voice welcomed the competitors to the Reproduction Games. It said they had been gathered from across galaxies. Only the most worthy would remain in the end. The reward was not only survival, but the right to continue the legacy of their species. It explained that females from many worlds had been watching and would choose their future mate based on the outcomes. The human looked around trying to understand. He had no weapons, no armor, no guide. Others wore strange suits or carried sharp tools or had glowing marks on their bodies. Some already began sizing each other up as enemies. He felt like a child among giants. One creature, tall and covered in plates of bone-like armor, walked up to him and laughed. It called him soft and weak. It said he would die in the first hour. Others joined the laughter. The human said nothing. He only looked around slowly, trying to see where he was and what was happening. The arena shifted. The black floor broke apart and turned into a new place. In the blink of an eye, he stood in a dense forest where trees had silver leaves and vines moved like snakes. The air was thick and warm, and strange cries echoed through the sky. The first challenge had begun. Survive the wild and reach the crystal tower before the twin moons rise. That was the rule. No time limit was given, but the twin moons had already begun to rise. The human moved forward carefully. He had no map, no weapon, no idea what creatures lived here, but he had something else. He had instincts and curiosity. He remembered how humans once hunted in forests with nothing but sharp stones. He listened to the sounds of the wind and the cracking of branches. He moved like someone who had watched animals before, not to kill them, but to learn from them. He saw a beast chasing another competitor in the distance. The beast had 8 legs and glowing red eyes. It was fast and silent. The competitor tried to fight it with a spear, but it was useless. The beast tore through metal and bone and vanished into the trees. The human hid behind a large root and waited. He knew he could not run fast or fight strong, but he could think. He watched where the vines moved and where the light broke through the trees. He found dry branches and tied them together with soft grass. He shaped a long stick and made a trap above a stream where he saw strange footprints. He worked fast, but quietly time passed. He saw others fall. Some were poisoned by plants, some were caught by beasts, some simply gave up and vanished. He kept moving. He ate glowing fruits after watching animals eat them first. He drank from still water only after testing it with leaves. He used fire from rubbing stones and kept the flames small. He did not try to win. He tried to survive when the first moon rose. He was halfway to the tower. It shimmered in the distance like a blade of ice. The creatures became more active as darkness grew. He hid in a hollow tree and waited. He heard screams but stayed silent. When morning came, he moved again. Finally, when the second moon began to rise, he reached the edge of the tower's base. Only 6 others made it. All of them were wounded, tired, or angry. The human had scratches but nothing deep. His clothes were torn, but he still stood straight. The voice returned and said the first trial had ended. The towers opened. Inside were resting chambers and food and clean air. The female watchers had seen everything. Their images flashed above the arena. Beings of every shape and form looked down with curious eyes. Some looked impressed. One of them spoke. She said this one was different. He did not dominate by strength, but moved like water. He had no claws or teeth, but made the forest itself his tool. She smiled and said this might be the one. The human looked up but said nothing. He did not know her language, but he understood her tone. He sat on the floor of the tower and looked around. He was still alive. That was enough for now. He closed his eyes and breathed slow and deep while others argued and healed. He did not know what the next challenge would be. He only knew one thing. He would not give up. No matter what came next, he would face it not with hate, but with hope. The games had just begun. The first trial inside the crystal tower. The air was fresh and cool, like spring morning rain, the kind that touches the skin soft and light, but still brings calm. The human stood in a wide chamber where the walls shimmered like liquid mirrors, and every step made the floor glow under his feet. He moved slowly, watching everything not in fear but in focus. He knew this peace would not last. Strange machines hovered in the air, spraying healing mist on the remaining competitors. One had deep cuts, one was missing a limb, one breathed heavy like his chest had broken bones. The human had only bruises and scratches, and even that surprised some of the watchers who floated above in holographic circles, showing silent faces watching every move. He did not try to talk to the others. Most of them ignored him or looked at him like a puzzle with missing parts. One creature with skin like stone watched him with quiet interest but said nothing. The others ate the food from the tower's trays without care. The human waited and watched first. He tested one fruit on a small insect he caught from a corner. When the insect showed no harm, he took a small bite and waited longer. Only when his body stayed calm did he eat more. His actions were not grand, but each step made the watchers lean closer. They had seen many warriors before, strong, wild, fast, loud, but this one was quiet. He did not act for show. He acted for survival. That made some curious and some afraid. Suddenly, the voice returned, strong and clear in every mind. It said the second challenge would begin soon. The tower opened and shifted until the walls became glass and showed what waited outside. A floating maze spread across the sky, made of glowing platforms, spinning walls, shifting paths, and sharp winds. No ground below, only clouds. The goal was simple. Cross the sky maze, reach the core ring, and unlock the gate. But the voice warned that this trial was not for the body alone. It was for the mind. The maze would test memory, balance, and fear. One wrong step would not just mean falling. It would mean being forgotten. Human stepped forward. He looked at the maze not like a soldier, but like a builder. He saw how some platforms changed when others moved. He saw how wind paths bent only when pressure shifted on certain tiles. He understood the maze was not random. It followed a pattern. and patterns could be learned. The first to leap into the maze was a warrior with 4 arms and glowing eyes. He charged ahead, smashing through barriers using brute force. At first he moved fast, but then a trap opened below him, and he vanished into the clouds without a sound. Others moved more carefully but still fell. Some grew angry. Some panicked. Some tried to cheat the path and found only dead ends. The human stayed back for a long time, just watching. He closed his eyes and traced the movement of the paths in his mind. He felt the wind through his fingers. He listened to the hum of the platforms. Then he stepped forward. Every move he made seemed slow, but each was true. He shifted, weight on one foot to change the balance of a panel. He jumped sideways, not forward, to trigger a wind tunnel that lifted him to a higher ring. He used reflection from a curved platform to see hidden traps. He never rushed. He never stopped thinking above the maze. The watchers now leaned in. One of the female observers, with golden skin and blue eyes without pupils, whispered something to her sister. They had never seen a human before. Now they saw something new. This one was not like the ones they studied in old reports. This one adapted. This one evolved. With each step halfway through the maze, the human met a dead end. A long gap stretched before him with no visible way across. Behind him, a loud crack warned that the path he stood on would fall soon. Still, he did not panic. He bent down and picked up a loose stone from the edge of the platform and tossed it into the space. The stone did not fall. It hovered in one place. That was the trick. He took a long breath and ran forward, stepping on invisible support, one at a time, trusting his mind more than his eyes. One misstep could mean death, but he trusted the clues and his judgment. He made it across. Only 3 others reached the final platform. One was bleeding from his leg. One had burns. The third one collapsed and could not rise again. Only the human stood straight, breathing hard but clear. His hands shook, but not from fear. From the rush of knowing he had done what others could. Not. The platform became a lift that rose into a sphere of white light. Inside they found a room with walls made of memory glass. Each wall showed the maze they had passed. It also showed moments from their past. The human saw his family, his home, his old life. For a second his chest grew tight, but he stayed focused. A question echoed in the chamber. It asked each survivor to choose. Go back to safety and leave the games, or stay and risk everything in the final trial. The others hesitated. One chose to leave. One said nothing. The human stepped forward and placed his hand on the panel that said stay. He had come this far not by luck, but by choice. He would not turn back. The walls turned dark. The lift rose higher, and the chamber changed into a resting area again. Food appeared. Warm light covered the room. Healing fields wrapped around each survivor. The voice said they had earned this moment of peace. But only for now. The female watchers above whispered again. This one was different. He did not seek victory for pride. He sought survival with purpose. He respected life. He did not kill when it was not needed. Some began to wonder. Maybe strength was not always muscle and fire. Maybe strength was also thought and kindness. The human sat in the corner, eating slowly and thinking deeply. He knew this was not over. The next trial would be harder. But he also knew something had changed. Not just in him, but in the eyes watching. Above, they no longer saw him as prey. They saw him as something else. He still did not speak much, but his actions had begun to speak louder than any words the mental word. The chamber became quiet, like a desert before storm. Light faded from the walls, and the air grew heavy. The human looked around as shadows stretched across the floor, like reaching fingers. A sound like a slow breath filled the space, but it did not come from a mouth. It came from the structure itself. like the tower was alive and waiting for something to happen. The voice returned softer now, like a whisper behind the ear. It said the next trial was not of the body or the senses but of the soul. The trial of mind would begin now. The platform under the survivors vanished, and each of them fell into a void without color, without shape, without sound. There was no pain. No fear, no direction, only the strange weightless feeling of falling forever. Then everything changed again. The human opened his eyes and found himself standing in a small room made of stone and wood. The smell of earth and ash filled the air. It was a place he knew but had never seen. A simple house with a fire burning low and a table full of old tools. Wind moved through the window with the sound of leaves outside. But nothing felt real. He stepped outside and saw people walking, but their faces were blurred like memories half remembered. They moved like ghosts, repeating the same actions again and again. The human called to them, but they did not hear. He moved through the place watching, trying to understand. This was not a real world. This was a dream shaped by something deeper. Then, the first illusion began. A boy appeared with clear eyes and a wide smile, calling him brother. The human felt something in his chest twist. He had no brother, but the boy felt real. They walked together and laughed and shared food and talked like they had known each other forever. The illusion tried to pull him in like warm water around the body, but the human stopped. He looked at the boy and asked a simple question. What was the name of the dog they had raised together? The boy paused, then smiled again, but said nothing. The human nodded and turned away. The illusion broke apart like glass struck by wind, and the world shifted again now. He stood in a battlefield where fire covered the sky, and machines screamed across the ground. He held a weapon in his hands, and people shouted around him. An enemy rushed forward with glowing blades and sharp teeth. Fear rose inside him like fire through dry leaves, but again he paused. He dropped the weapon and raised his hand. The enemy froze and shattered into smoke again. The world changed. A voice came. This time, it was his own voice, but colder, heavier, like someone had drained it of all warmth. It asked him why he kept fighting. What was the purpose? He had no weapons, no family, no promise of reward. The games were not his war. Why stay? Why suffer? Why not let go and vanish? The human did not answer right away. He sat down in the middle of the void and closed his eyes. He let the voice speak. He let the images rise and fade. He did not fight them. He only listened and breathed. Then slowly he spoke, not with anger, but with truth. He said he fought because he could. He said he stayed because others gave up. He said even if he died, he would not die in silence. He would die trying. He would die knowing he faced what others feared. And if even one being in the stars remembered that a human came this far, not for power but for purpose, then that was enough. The illusions vanished. The room turned white and bright. The other survivors appeared beside him. One screamed in rage, one sat shaking. Only the human stood calm, his eyes steady. The voice returned, stronger now, and said the trial of mind had ended. Only those who knew themselves had passed. The watchers above were silent. Then one by one they began to speak. They said this human did not bend to fear. He did not fall to sweet lies or sharp pain. He remained himself through storm and silence. One female with silver hair and wings of light said she had never seen such a mind. Not in her world, not in any record. Another said his spirit burned like old fire, the kind that stayed warm even after the wind had passed. A third whispered that if he survived the final trial, she would offer him a place among her people, not as a prize, but as a partner. The human did not hear their words. He only stood watching the light return to the chamber. His hands were shaking now, but he kept them still. He knew something had shifted again. Not just in the watchers, but in the air itself. The tower now felt less like a cage and more like a path. The other survivors looked at him with new eyes. One nodded in respect. One stayed silent but did not turn away. They had all seen the same things, but the human had walked through fire without losing his shape. That made them pause. The platform rose again, this time into a space filled with soft light and deep music. The voice said they had earned rest before the final trial. Food appeared again, but this time there was also writing on the wall. Not commands, not warnings, but stories. Stories of past champions, some who won, some who failed, some who changed the games forever. One space was still empty. It waited for a name. The human looked at it for a long time, then turned away. He had not come for a name on a wall. He had come to finish what was started. He sat again in the quiet corner, ate slowly, and watched the others. He did not plan his next move with maps or weapons. He planned it with silence and memory. He knew the mind was the strongest tool of all, and he would use it again soon. Betrayal and final showdown. The time for the final trial had come. The tower shook with deep sounds like distant thunder, calling every soul to attention. Walls of crystal slid apart, and the chamber filled with sharp golden light. The human opened his eyes and rose from the corner where he had rested. His body felt tired, but his spirit stood tall like a tree that had seen many storms and still held its roots firm. The voice returned louder than ever before. It declared that this was the last test. Only one would win. The final trial was simple in words but full of danger. A full arena of shifting platforms, open sky, sudden weapons, traps, beasts, and betrayal. Each survivor would be placed in a different corner of the battleground. No allies, no rules, no mercy. The reward was everything. The right to survive. The right to choose. The right to be chosen. The watchers would see every moment. The females from many worlds would see not just the body, but the heart that burned within the human. Was lifted to a tall metal spire at the edge of the arena. Wind blew wild across the open field below. Tall walls lined with strange creatures looked down in silence. The other survivors stood at their own towers, eyes sharp, ready to move the moment the signal came. Then the voice spoke the final word, and the battle began. The human did not rush. He crouched low and moved with care, stepping only where the platform held firm. He had learned in every trial that the one who moves fastest often falls first. Below him, a platform opened like a mouth and swallowed a beast that had been hidden from view. The human jumped aside and rolled forward, avoiding the trap by a breath. Screams and roars echoed across the field. One warrior had already fallen into a fire pit. Another tried to fly but was shot down by a hidden turret. The human moved from shadow to shadow, picking up pieces of metal and parts of broken machines. He built a small tool with sharp edges and tied it to a stick using fiber from his clothes. It was not a perfect weapon, but it was enough. Then he saw one of the survivors trapped under rubble. Blood ran from her shoulder. She screamed in a strange language, but the fear was clear. The human looked around, then stepped forward. He lifted the rubble using the beam and helped her crawl out. She stared at him, confused and unsure. No words passed between them, but something changed in her eyes. She pointed toward a danger he had not seen and vanished into the smoke. The watchers above leaned closer. One of them asked why help a rival in a death game. Another said perhaps humans had strange logic. But the female with wings of light spoke again. She said this was not weakness. This was strength of spirit, and that strength would shine brighter than weapons. The human kept moving, climbing walls, avoiding lasers, using mirrors to reflect heat beams, and creating false trails for tracking drones. He did not fight every enemy. He picked his moments with care like a hunter in the wild. One by one the others fell. Some by force, some by fire, some by mistakes they could not take back. Only two remained now. The human and one tall creature with skin like steel and 4 arms, strong enough to bend metal. The voice called it the final duel. The arena shifted again and brought both of them to the center where fire rose around them and watchers filled the sky with glowing eyes. Tall creature roared and charged forward, swinging a heavy blade taken from the ground. The human moved. Fast but not to attack. He ducked and rolled, throwing sand into the creature's eyes. It did not blind him, but slowed him for a breath. That was enough. The human climbed the edge of the platform and grabbed a hanging wire. He swung across to a control panel and hit the button. The floor shifted and the tall creature lost his balance for a moment. The human dropped down behind him and used his tool to cut a cord tied to a heavy stone hanging above. The stone fell and struck the creature's back, knocking him flat, but the creature rose again, bleeding but not broken. He threw the human across the platform and charged again. The human hit the wall hard, but rolled up to his knees. He looked around, saw a small crack near the creature's foot. He picked up a sharp piece of metal and threw it not at the creature, but at the crack. It widened and steam burst out, burning the creature's leg. The creature stumbled, and the human ran forward, jumping over the steam and slamming his shoulder into the creature's side. They both fell, rolling across the platform. The human grabbed the blade and placed it near the creature's throat. But he did not strike. He looked up at the watchers. He looked at the female with wings. Then he dropped the blade and stepped back. The creature lay still, staring in silence. The voice announced that the human had won, not by killing, not by rage, but by choice. The arena turned white and soft music filled the air. The fire died and wind carried away the smoke. A new platform rose from the center and the human stood alone as lights fell on him from every direction. The watchers spoke now one by one. They said this human was not the strongest in muscle, but in mind and soul. He had faced pain and did not break. He had seen power and did not lose himself. He had saved a rival and spared an enemy. They said he had passed not just their test, but something older and deeper. The female with wings flew down and stood before him. She looked into his eyes and asked, not as a queen, not as a judge, but as one being to another. She asked what he wanted. The human stood silent for a moment, then said he wanted nothing taken, only something shared. He did not come to rule. He came to learn. He came to live. He came to remind the stars that even the smallest fire can warm the coldest night. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of meaning. The games had ended, but something greater had begun. The chosen flame. Wind moved soft through the sky chambers as the crowd slowly faded into silence. No music played now. No lights danced. Only the breath of something ancient filled the space. The human stood in the center where no walls remained. Around him floated the watchers, the elders, the females from worlds far beyond what any human eyes had ever seen. One by one they came forward, not with fear, not with pride, but with something between wonder and respect. The one with silver hair, whose voice echoed like song, asked him if he understood what he had done. He looked up into her shining eyes and answered with calm words. He said he had not come to impress. He had only chosen to keep walking. When the path turned dark, another stepped forward, her body made of crystal and flame. She asked why he saved a rival who might have ended his journey. He answered without pause. He said, a true survivor does not step on the weak. A true flame lights others when it can. That is how it grows without becoming wild. The winged female now stood close to him. She looked at him not with desire, not with power, but with a quiet softness that carried weight. She said many had won before him, but none had walked through every trial with this kind of strength. Others had conquered. Others had destroyed. Others had forced their names into history. But he had been chosen by the fire itself, not because he wanted to win, but because he refused to lose himself. From across the stars came voices from screens and signals and visions. Females from worlds he had never known sent their thoughts there. Wishes, their curiosity. Some asked to see him. Some asked to learn his ways. Some asked only to speak his name once and remember it for what it meant. He did not smile or raise his hands like a king. He did not bow like a servant. He stood like a tree that had survived every season and still reached for the sun. His body bore scars, but his eyes carried something deeper. Not sorrow, not pride, but clarity. The voice that had guided the games returned now, but it was changed. No longer cold, no longer distant. It spoke with warmth, like a story told beside fire on a long night. It said the games had found what they did not expect. They had built this place to test for power, for speed, for control. But the human had shown them something else. Patience, thought, mercy, and purpose. The tower above the arena opened like a flower, revealing a path of light. The human was told he could return to Earth if he wished. He could live as he once lived and forget this sky. But he could also choose something new. A journey across the stars, a place among many, a bond with those who had seen him as more than just a winner. As a symbol, the other survivors were brought forward. They did not look broken. They looked changed. One came and bowed his head in respect. Another offered the blade he had once raised against the human, not as surrender, as thanks. They had not lost. They had seen what it meant to win in a way they had never been taught. From the crowd of females, a group stepped forward, not with chains, not with crowns, but with open hands. They asked him what kind of future he saw, one with strength alone, or one with shared strength. The human looked at them and gave the only answer he could. He said strength was real only when shared. A seed grows not just because it is strong, but because the soil gives it room to rise. They smiled. And one by one, they offered him symbols of their worlds, a stone that glowed with memory, a petal that hummed with sound, a small flame that never faded, a drop of water that danced on air. Each gift meant more than gold. Each gift said, "We see you." Final choice was his. Stay in the stars or return to the ground. Be a symbol or be a shadow. The human did not ask for advice. He closed his eyes and listened to the silence of his own breath. He saw the faces he had met, the places he had crossed, the fire he had walked through. Then he opened his eyes and stepped forward. He did not walk alone. The winged one walked beside him. The silver one followed. The crystal one smiled and nodded. From different worlds they came, from different forms. But now they walked as one voice, as one shape, as one future. The platform rose not into sky, but into light that held no shape and no end. Above the games, a new symbol appeared in the air. Not the spiral, not the flame, but a figure standing tall with open hands and a heart burning not to destroy, but to warm. In far corners of the galaxy, stories began to spread. Not of a human who killed his way to glory, not of a warrior who crushed others, but of a man who walked through trials with nothing but will. A man who held no weapon but used every moment as his tool. A man who stood in silence and still changed everything. Some said he was chosen by fate. Some said he was proof that small fires burn longest. Some said he was just a human who refused to quit. No matter the name he was given, the meaning stayed clear. He was not just the winner of the games. He was the one who turned the games into something more, and the stars would remember the end.